Okay, so we can begin. Tonight we're going to be doing the 9th principle of our faith. That I believe with perfect faith that this Torah will not be changed. There will be no new Torah given by Hashem. So as we've been doing recently, just give a little bit of a brief introduction about the principle, the ideas behind it. Rambam, having put together the 13 principles, they are the foundations of our emunah. And they're very important building blocks. Building blocks, I call them building blocks because each one represents a very important part of our emunah upon which you can build further. You cannot take one part because then the whole thing falls apart, it collapses. The Rambam in his time, and other rabbis as well who've spoken about the various principles of our faith, even though they may have had a different number, different wording for it, they all pretty much agreed that these are the principles that can never be argued upon. There are many halachot that one can give opinions about. There are issues in Yahadut and Judaism that one can discuss at length, in depth. These are principles that are immovable. The Rambam during his time had many arguments, many discussions, philosophical and about religion, with many Jews, many groups that were becoming more and more distant from Judaism. And the reason they were becoming distant at the time, this is after the Churban Bayit Sheni, after the destruction of the Second Temple, is because of the many new influences that came about to the world. Influences in the form of Christianity and Islam, which posed a danger to Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael as a whole, in general, was always in danger of assimilation, intermarriage, all sorts of pressures, persecutions, even from the pagan world. And now they have persecutions of another kind, from a religious point of view, coupled with real hatred that has nothing to do with religion. So the Rambam had to defend the Torah from various directions. There's a sefer called Moreh Nevuchim that he put together, a guide to those who are perplexed. Perplexed, who's perplexed? One who has doubts and questions about emunah, about the very basics. And why should there be any doubts? Why should there be any major questions? If there was a proper transmission from a father to a son, if everything was handed down properly, if people were to grow up in a proper Jewish surrounding, there should not be that many issues, that many problems. But people grow up in different places of the world. People have different challenges. People have different weaknesses, even by nature, that they're born with, that they have to contend with. So the Rambam, of course, in having to deal with all of this, put together many sefarim, whether it is the Sefer Yad HaChazakah and Halacha, to organize everything, where one can find the Halacha just about on any topic in Judaism, or his various principles and pirushim that he put together in explaining the Torah. Remember, this is a time when Christianity is about to go on a crusade, 2 crusades actually, later on, against who? Against the Jews and against the Muslims too. Crusades, wars, and it's not just about territory, it's about religion. It's about spreading their word, their faith, subduing everybody else, by force if necessary. And you're dealing with psychological pressure too. Psychological pressure in the form of the Goyim using our Torah to try to prove their points. And if one is not learned enough, you can easily get caught in their trap. They're calling their Torah the Brit HaChadashah. It's the New Testament. It's a new covenant. We never heard of it, that there was such a thing. New? Ma pitom. The Rambam says there is no such thing as new. God says specifically there will not be a new Torah. Where do we know that from? Because the Torah emphasizes it in various ways. Not once or twice, several times. The mitzvah itself of lo tigra velo tosif, which is a prohibition against adding or detracting, making any changes in the Torah, is really in itself sufficient. It says you cannot alter this Torah in any way. I gave no permission to do so. This will remain so until further notice. And there will not be a further notice about any changes, because it is understood that this Torah will be, as the Pasuk says it many times, Chukat olam ledorotechem. There are certain mitzvot that are intended to be forever. The reason I say certain, because certain mitzvot are dependent on if we are in Eretz Israel, are dependent if we have a Beit HaMikdash, a temple, and korbanot, and the like. But otherwise, there's no reason to say that this mitzvah will eventually, chas v'shalom, God forbid, be abolished or be changed. Right? It will be forever. But a little bit deeper understanding of why this is so. What's the significance? Before we go on to explaining a little bit more the principle, just a little bit more background as to why this should be so. If we look back at creation, Kabbalistically, we see that everything that Hashem created, He is done b'shlemut. He's done with perfection. Kadosh Baruch Hu is perfect. He's complete. And that which He creates is therefore complete and perfect. In the very beginning of creation, Hashem says about everything He created, ki tov. It's all good. Good? What is good? Good is something relative. What's good for me may not be good for you. But when Hashem declares that something is good, He means three things. Good means it's shalem, it's complete, it's not lacking anything. Good means that it is essential for creation. That's what He made it for. Everything has a purpose. And good also means zemesharet et hatachlit. It serves the ultimate purpose of life in creation. It's there for a purpose. It serves the purpose. It's not redundant. It's not something extra. It's not just something for the fun of it. It serves the ultimate purpose of creation. The only thing that is lacking in perfection, and it was intentionally made so, is the Adam, the human being. Hashem made him in an imperfect state. He actually physically is in an imperfect state when he's born. Until he grows up, he's dependent on his parents, on his mother's milk, right, and so forth. He cannot walk, he cannot take care of himself until who knows what age, when he becomes independent. And Hashem makes man in this form, and He gives him basically a message. Listen, you are in an imperfect state because that is your job, and that is part of your mission, to perfect yourself in this world. Jew or non-Jew, man, we're talking about man, the human being, man, women. Perfect yourselves, refine yourself. That is part of your mission in this world. Hashem does not create a world for the fun of it. Nothing is just for the fun of it. There's a purpose here. And man is the crown of creation. He's the only one that is given free will, the ability to make certain responsible decisions. And therefore, those decisions will determine, of course, if he perfects himself, if he's able to elevate himself from the animal that he has in him to a more perfect state, more spiritual state, to resemble his maker, to resemble his creator, to resemble more the angelic beings. Man is capable of doing that. Even though we have netiyot, we have our temptations and our inclinations, and we have our difficulties, yetzer hara, yetzer tov, all these evil inclinations, that's part of the job, that's part of the challenge, I should say, where if things would be obvious and easy, then everybody would be doing the same thing. That's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to have the challenge in the battle because there's a concept called reward and punishment, which is another principle that we will be talking about. That we are here to do something and we will be rewarded for it. In other words, eventually there's compensation for this, which is another important topic, another important principle. Nothing is for free. So man is the only one that has that ability to change, to transform himself, and that is why he is born initially in an imperfect state. Otherwise, everything that Hashem makes is just right. The earth, the planet Earth, is in exact, perfect position as far as distance from the sun, an average, I think, of 93 million miles. If it would be too close, we would burn up. Too far, it would be too cold. Of course, there's seasonal changes. Of course, if you go to the northern latitude, it's colder. Well, don't live there. It's for polar bears, not for human beings, I say. I don't know what people are doing living there. Even though, if you really want to know, in the very beginning of creation, there were no extremes. Before the Mabul, there was no such a thing as a north and south pole, as far as the extreme climatic differences. It was only after the Mabul that things changed dramatically. So since in Hashem there are no changes, Hashem always stays the same is true with the Torah. Because what is the Torah? The Torah and Hashem are really one. The Torah is the Chokhmah of Hashem. So He and His Chokhmah are really one. There's no reason to therefore believe that Hashem changes His mind, that He gives one kind of a Torah one day, another kind of a Torah another day. This is the roadmap for life too. It is a roadmap, it is a guide, and therefore it is intended to be what it is, without any changes. What does change in life as a result of many reasons? People change. People may have believed one thing yesterday, and today they believe something else. People change their mind. God doesn't change His mind, but people change their mind. And because people are changeable, and people have prejudices, preferences, people have certain biases, so they like to adapt things to themselves. Because as we've said several times, it is not something easy for man to adapt to something, to other people, to rules. It is easier if we tell him, you adapt to me. Husband and wife get married, especially in a later age, they're going to have a difficult time. Much more than if they had gotten married in a younger age. Person becomes old, he's more set in his ways. It's harder to change. It's just psychologically, mentally, emotionally, more difficult. It's not for everyone. It makes no difference how good you are, how righteous you are. It's more difficult. Even physically, imagine a woman giving birth at the age of 50. It's possible. It's still possible. She's going to have a harder time raising her babies. A woman of 50, she can still change the diapers. She can maybe still cook in the kitchen, but to move around, it's not the same like an 18-year-old, like a 22-year-old. But what about a man? He has his own problems at that age. He slows down. And it's not just physically, the energy too. Even if he keeps in shape, we're not the same that we were when we were in our 20s, 30s. Those are the best times to get married and raise children, when we are young-spirited. There are advantages to old age. We learn from our mistakes. We're smarter, hopefully, right? And we do things right. But obviously, if we were to learn from others and learn Torah early on, then we would not have to make so many mistakes too. But in speaking about human beings are frail. And because of their weaknesses, they tend to like things in a certain way. And therefore, you will find many individuals who will try to take apart the Torah to suit their needs. They're uncomfortable with the way things are set right now. They are trying to make it comply with their lifestyle or with their other beliefs. Not too many people have an open mind. Complete open mind, right? Which will enable them to really see what is best for them, what is the best in their interest. What is their reality, what is the emet. Not too many people are like that. You need to begin with an open mind, but people do not always begin with an open mind, and especially at a later age when they are set in their ways and they have certain philosophies and beliefs about life. If they see something that is contrary to their beliefs, they will try to adapt it or make changes to it or interpret it in their way. It will be harder for them to accept somebody else's interpretation. Oh, he doesn't know what talking about. That's his dogma. They'll call it dogma. What do you mean? Maybe he is right. Maybe you are wrong, right? It takes a certain amount of openness to really start from scratch and really analyze things properly. So what should happen is people should adapt themselves to the Torah and not the other way around. Especially if you start with the simple basic principle that the Torah is divine. If a person has a problem with that, then it's going to be difficult to convince him, you know what you got to do, you got to take the Torah and adapt it to you. Oh, Why? Why should I do that? Because the Torah is divine. You know, that, oh, well, I don't know about that. Oh, if you don't know about that, then I can't convince you. Well, obviously, we need to start with the basics, the aleph bet. Before you want to build the vocabulary, you want to know how to speak a language, you have to know the basics. You have to know how to pronounce the letters. You have to know how to, verbalize the basics. Otherwise, how can you build sentences and structures? So the Torah is divine. Torah min hashamayim. It's not made up. It's number one. Before we can even go on saying, you know what, this Torah will not be changed. So this Torah that is a map forever, a guide for life, is the ultimate truth. And something which is the ultimate truth, as we believe, cannot be changed. A Jew who understands this is therefore convinced, hopefully, that the Ma'amad Har Sinai that we had, that we all stood there and heard with our own ears, the voice of Hashem speaking to us, and we were so impressed that we said Na'aseh v'nishma, that particular Ma'amad Har Sinai, from what we know, will never repeat itself in that form. There will be a tremendous itgalut, revelation from Hashem, when Mashiach comes. Until then, there's no itgalut. So the greatest event that is about to happen, called Mashiach, is the greatest event, really, since Sheshet Yemei Bereshit, since the creation. Even greater than Ma'amad Har Sinai. Because Ma'amad Har Sinai we saw, we experienced, not the Goyim. Mashiach, what's different about Mashiach, the revelation of Mashiach, and the revelation really of Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, that Hashem will be one, that is the most incredible stage in the entire existence of this earth called Olam Hazeh. It is the last scene of a movie, if we can call it that, which basically explains everything in case you came late. And we all come late because we were not here in the beginning. It's 5,771 years so far this movie is that long. And hopefully it's about to finish. So to see the last scene is usually, depending who the producer and the director is, it's usually very, very interesting. So hopefully we will be celebrating the last scene very, very soon. In the meantime, part of our belief system is that there will be no additional major revelation like Har Sinai. Not only that, in the Galut, we know it as a fact. We know that Nisim are not Gluim, miracles are not open. There is Astar Panim. Astarat Panim means that Hashem hides his face. He conceals himself. And he does so always intentionally. Always because if he would be too obvious, then there's no free will, or it infringes on free will. So Hashem's concealment in many, many ways is beneficial. It's necessary. The Galut makes the concealment even deeper. So we don't even know that we're in Galut. We're comfortable. People like America. They think this is their new home. If anybody thinks like that, he's in darkness. How could you not believe and want and desire with all your heart to be in Eretz Yisrael? Obviously, in the ideal Eretz Yisrael, where we have a good government without any problems, how could one not want that? Unless he is forgotten. You know, what is he for? What is he here for? What's the galut? Obviously, people have forgotten. And that means that their connection to Sinai is somewhat severed. Not completely, but at least at this moment, when they're thinking like that. So this Ma'amad Har Sinai had to happen once in order to be convincing that this is Torah min hashamayim. Not by Moshe, not by a committee. That is why it happened. But it will never happen again because there will be no other Torah, no new Torah. Were there to be a new Torah, then Hashem would have to present it in the same way he did back then, nothing less. Nothing less. It's not fair. You want to change, and you said yourself you're not going to change, then you better tell us why you're changing. And you better do it in the same way, in an as similar convincing way that you've done so in the past. So before we go on to explaining the details of this principle, it's important for us to understand a few ideas here. There's a few questions. We find that even though the Torah is not going to ever be changed, that there have been many machlokot, discussions in the Gemara, Midrashim. The Torah appears to have expanded. We have all of a sudden tremendous Gemarot, Mishnayot, Halachot, much more than what we have in the Torah Shebechtav, in the written word. Now, even though we are aware, we are familiar with the concept of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Torah Sheba'al Peh is an intrinsic part, integral part of the Torah Shebechtav. You can't do without the oral word. You need it to explain the written word. Nevertheless, there's a lot more than what we would expect because of all the discussions. And all these discussions lends to a tremendous, what appears to be new Torah, that some would call new Torah. Obviously, it's not new. What is it really? The reason why we have these discussions and all these machlokot, part of it is intentional. Hashem actually intended that Chachamim would discuss, would elaborate, would give opinions of their own. That is what Pardes means, Pshat, Remez, Drash, Besod, various layers of Torah. As long as you do not contradict in what you're saying an established principle of the Torah, you're not contradicting with what you say something that's already accepted, and you can say whatever you want, and it may be acceptable. It may not be applicable because we can only apply one law at a time. We can't apply 10 laws. Everybody has a law, and they, of course, are not compatible to each other. They don't go against the Torah. They have opinions as to what to do. Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai, they both are right, but we can only apply one at a time. So we have a rule. How do we apply? Well, in that situation, Achrei Rabim Lehatot, the Torah says you have an argument, you have two opposing opinions, go by the majority. That is one way of resolving the dispute. But this whole idea of having the disputes to begin with, partially, is intended in Yashamayim to expand on the Torah, not a new Torah. This is all in the Torah. But to show the greatness of the Torah, Hashem wants us to see how deep the Torah is, how great it is. Look at all the Chidushim. Do you know how many Chidushim there are on Parashat HaShavua over the past 3,000 years? I mean, books and books and books, and what about all those that are not in print? Tremendous Chidushim, tremendous Torah. This is not Torah Hadashah. This is all the potential of Torah. The potential Torah that is written, that is embedded in the Torah, that has always been there, but it's been up to us to draw from it, to learn, to expound, and to bring out that which is hidden in the Torah. There's no machloket anywhere, legabi yesodot haemunah, legabi the foundations and principles of our faith. Everybody's in agreement about them. You're not going to chas v'shalom see someone and say, there's no tchiyat hametim. Chas v'shalom. He's a kofer, he's a heretic. Right? Somebody that denies any of the principles of our faith, any of the foundations of our faith, of the Torah, nobody. There's no machloket on that. There are discussions and some machlokot about the fine details, about certain halachot, about the limitations of the halacha. How much does the halacha encompass? Things like of that nature, but not about the emunah, and not about the basic halacha. How about the Gemara? There's a Gemara Masechet Nida that says mitzvot betelot le'atid. Mitzvot will cease to exist in the future. It's brought down. Gemara brings it down there for a reason. What about that statement? You know, anybody who's trying to look for trouble will love to quote these kinds of Gemarot, because this may serve his purpose. Oh, the mitzvot will no longer exist in the future. You see, the Torah will change. You see how they may use something and take it out of context or not fully understand it, not go into the commentaries and try to figure out what the rabbis say. They'll say either it's a contradiction to what we've learned, or look, Torah will be different. We know the Torah will not change. So what is that statement being made? What does it mean, mitzvot betelot le'atid? What will happen after Mashiach comes as far as the mitzvot? Think about it for a moment. What will everything be the exact same thing? We have a machloket as it is in the Gemara about the stage called Yemot HaMashiach. What will happen? Major changes, or life will continue to be the way we know it? We do know that some changes will occur for sure. Am Yisrael goes back home, Kibbutz Galuyot, eventually Tchiyat HaMetim, Binyan Beit HaMikdash. We do know some changes occur, but will there be a major change in nature, in physics? Not necessarily. Not really. But we do hold, based on all the hochachot, all the proof, and all the pesukim, Not like Shemuel, who holds that there's not too much difference. We hold and we see that there are major differences. The fact that people may no longer die after Tchiyat HaMetim, that's in itself is a big difference. The fact that life will be in some ways easier, there's no Yetzer Hara, isn't that different? So I think the general consensus is that there's no real machloket in the Gemara, but we're talking about different stages of Mashiach. Even in Mashiach, Yemot HaMashiach, there's different stages. There's a stage of Tchiyat HaMetim, right, which is not in the very beginning. So we are talking about different periods of time, and there's not that much time left anyway. So the question is it the beginning of Mashiach or later on? There will be changes. There will definitely be some changes. But what about the mitzvot? The mitzvot will not really change. What does change? One opinion explains as follows. When the dead rise, are they obligated by the mitzvot? Not in the same way. Some of the mitzvot will not be applicable. Why won't they be applicable to them at least? Because when they get up, Tchiyat HaMetim, they're getting up in a perfect state, not in an imperfect state that they were before. And they very much would resemble the Avot, our forefathers of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, on which the Midrash says they fulfilled at least the mitzvot of the Torah in spirit. In other words, even though they were not obligated. So even if those who rise will fulfill the mitzvot, they will not be doing so because they're obligated to. They will be doing it as mitzuveh, as she'eno mitzuveh ve'oseh. He's not commanded to do it. In other words, they may do it, but it will not be the same. They will not have that need. The mitzvot will still be around. They may not be applicable to them or all the mitzvot may not be applicable at the time, just like now. Just like now, certain mitzvot are not applicable because we have no Beit HaMikdash. Certain mitzvot may not apply there because there's not a need because of their perfect state. Otherwise, another way to understand it is it says clearly that Hashem yaviret ruach hatumah min haaretz. He will remove the unclean spirit from the world. What does that mean? There's no Yetzer Hara. There's no evil condition. There's no tavot. There's no tumah. If there is no such thing, then guess what? Obviously, the certain mitzvot are not going to be the same. Are not at least be performed in the same way. We won't have the same challenges. Sacrifices, for example, I believe one Midrash says there will be Korban Todah, to always say thank you to Hashem, why not? But Korban Chatat for sinning, there's no Yetzer Hara. Why should you bring a Korban Chatat if you didn't sin? Unless you're talking about Korban Chatat in the very beginning for all the sins in the past that we could not have brought yet Korban because there's no Beit HaMikdash. So initially, could be there will be Korban Chatat. But later on, we have a Beit HaMikdash, we have Korbanot, but what kind of Korbanot? Korban Todah. So there are some changes, there are mitzvot. That mitzvah is not shayach now because there are no sins. Otherwise, we need to keep in mind that after Tchiyat HaMetim, at least for a period of time, there's no sachar va'onish, there's no reward and punishment anymore. This is it. Once the curtain comes up, Mashiach appears, Hashem reveals himself, reveals the whole tachlit of the world, everything becomes obvious. Everything becomes obvious, there's no more reward and punishment. Everything of concerning reward and punishment is until that point in time. If there's no reward and punishment, then what's the mitzvah for? Averot. No Yetzer Hara, no real obligation because there's no reward for anything in addition. It will be of a different nature. We still have the Torah, we still have the mitzvah, but we don't have the application for the same reasons at that time. I want to suggest that there's one more idea, perhaps, that what that statement in the Gemara could have also been saying is that to a great extent, mitzvot betelot le'atil, we're talking about olam haba, not initially Yemot HaMashiach. Yemot HaMashiach, remember, is a stage that will last only until the year 6000. What do we have now? 239 years left. Mashiach comes now, that's all you have left with Yemot HaMashiach. Olam Haba, which we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to Mashiach too for other reasons, but we really are looking forward for Olam Haba, the eternal world. It's a spiritual world. It's not a physical world. In that world, for sure, that's the world of Netzach. That's the world that we all benefit and enjoy, the Ziva Shekhinah. That is a world where, even though there's Torah, just like there's Torah in Gan Eden, that the Neshamot are learning, the actual application of physical building sukkah, you don't have that. So you have, again, things that apply, things that don't apply because of the circumstances that have changed. Now that the Torah has been changed, just we cannot apply, we cannot use it. Hashem is not changing that. You know that there's a mitzvah to get divorced? You don't need to do that, but if you want to get divorced, then you need to do it in a certain way. There's a mitzvah to slaughter an animal. What if you don't want to eat meat? Then you don't slaughter an animal. You're not fulfilling that mitzvah. That mitzvah only applies in case you want to eat meat. Right? What if, person's parents passed away? Even though the kibbut avayim is always applicable even after they pass away, but it's in a different way. They're no longer alive that you can, help them, feed them, take care of them as it would apply when they would be alive. You see? So the Torah is the same. It depends what we're talking about. How to apply it, can it be applied? Not that there will be a change in the mitzvah itself. The circumstances, yes. Situations change. Then you have a pasuk that says, Torah mi'iti tetzeh, u'mishpati le'or ami margia. Pasuk in Yeshayahu. Torah will come forth from Hashem, and my laws and my statutes will go and be a light unto the nations that will calm them, guide them, and direct them. What does that mean? The Midrash says from the words Torah mi'iti tetzeh, Torah hadasha. Wow. Another one of those midrashim that anybody who's looking to pick a fight, looking for trouble, you see, it says Torah hadasha. The Midrash says so. Torah hadasha? What does that mean? Rashi says about the pasuk, Torah mi'iti tetzeh, u'mishpati le'or amim. He says like this. This Torah, this mishpati that Hashem is saying will go on to the nations, this is my safa berura that the Navi quotes in a different place, that all the nations will have one common language to serve Hashem. We take it to mean simple, that they will all speak in Hebrew. But there's more to that. She's explaining that Torah mi'itetzeh mishpati le'oramim is not just a language. It's that the Torah will be the constitution of the world. The mishpatim of the Torah will apply to everyone. And since everybody will adapt it, guess what will happen? Argia, le'oramim argia, they will calm down, they will build for no wars. If everybody will accept the Torah as their guide, as their mishpat, there will be roga, there will be calmness, there will be no war, there will be no reason to fight. So therefore, that is what the simple meaning of the pasuk means. But what about the midrash that says Torah hadasha? Well, for the goyim, for the world, this will be hadash. For Am Yisrael, this is not hadash. It's the same Torah. Torah hadasha for the goyim. For the world, this will be a new constitution, a new way of life, a new way of serving Hashem. Otherwise, if you want a deeper meaning of that midrash, we know that when Mashiach comes, he will reveal many of the secrets of the Torah. So for us, that will be new. There are many, many things that are hidden. There are many things that will be new when Mashiach reveals them. And I want to add that it's not only Mashiach revealing it, Hashem will reveal to us a lot of the Torah. And when Hashem reveals it, it will be completely brand new to us. Because when Hashem reveals, he will reveal obviously the depth of the Torah in a way that no human being could have ever known. All the secrets of the Torah, and a Torah that we will never forget, and a Torah that we will understand better. So in a sense, when Hashem presents it, coming from Him, then it will be like something brand new, even though the essence of the Torah is still the same. But all the explanations and how to apply it, and the additional chidushim, as the Midrash says, the same Midrash says, Torah Chadasha, chidush Torah. Chidush Torah, meaning that there will be many chidushim, many things that we will understand differently or understand better that we could not have understood until now. That is all introduction. A little bit more about the principle itself. The principle that the Torah will never be changed whatsoever. What that means is not only we cannot add a mitzvah, or we cannot remove a mitzvah, we cannot make any changes whatsoever, and we cannot interpret things any differently than what we were told. This is an important principle because it prevents problems in the future. As we said in the very beginning, there will be problems. The Torah knew in advance that there will be problems, that there will be false messiahs, false prophets who will attempt to mislead us. So the Torah has to safeguard itself. It has to safeguard the Jewish people. How are we going to do that? Hashem says, I'm going to tell you very clearly that I'm not changing my mind. This is the way it's going to remain. Things will not change. They will be there forever. That's why the statement is made. Torah Hashem Timima tells us that it's common sense that since the Torah of Hashem is, as we've said, complete, intact, there's no reason why there should be any changes. What does that mean, no reason? I can come up with reasons why to change. Life has changed. Today, they tell me that to turn on the light is just a switch. In the olden days, it was hard. You had to rub stones. That was work. That's why Shabbat, I couldn't make fire back then. But what about today? You see? So I may think, well, why not? What do you mean intact, complete? Torah Hashem Timah, there's no reason to change. I can think of a reason to change. But, as we've said, the Torah is eternal. The Torah is meant forever. The circumstances have changed. Circumstances have changed. It does not mean that I have to change the Torah. It just means that I have to adapt the circumstances to the Torah. I have certain rules, certain halachot. And if I would understand the Torah really on a deeper level, not just superficially, I would understand that there's really no need to change the Torah. The Torah makes sense even when life has changed, circumstances have changed. Because take a look at electricity or anything that appears to be easy. What did the Torah have in mind on Shabbat? What did the Torah really have in mind to rest? Is it only physical rest? No. As I've used my examples, you can carry this. This is very heavy. You can carry it on Shabbat across this room. It's heavy labor. But you cannot carry your key to your home outside in the street, from your house into the street, if there's no eruv in town. Eruv that would permit, that would allow one to carry. Carrying a Shabbat is a sur in Reshut Rabim. Carrying from your Reshut HaYachid, from your home to the street. It's an isur, it's a prohibition. Okay? There are many, many easy things to do that are prohibited. To make a knot may not be too difficult, right? It's prohibited. Coloration, to make, to paint, not too difficult. To write your name, what's the big deal? Right? There are many things that are easy. It has nothing to do with ease. Anybody who understands the concept of Shabbat realizes that Hashem gave us one day a week, the seventh day. Number 7 is holy, spiritual. Desist from what you do during the rest of the week. The rest of the week you're cursed. You have to sweat to earn a living. You have to work hard. You don't even have time for yourself or for your family. What about me, Hashem says? You're going to forget about me. No connection. I want to give you this gift. It's a matana for the Jewish people. I'm giving you a gift. Don't use it to go to the beach. Don't use it to go see a soccer match. Use it for your family. Enjoy yourself. And rest and sleep too. Eat good food. Spend time with your family and your kids that you haven't done enough during the week. That's what Shabbat is for. Don't think about your work and your business. Focus on the tachlit, on spirituality and the connection with me, on the connection with your soul. Remember who you are, where you come from, where you're headed. In order to achieve all of that, I have to abstain from physical work, even from something like turning on lights. This day has to be different. Otherwise, it will be like an ordinary day. How will I ever think of anything else? Imagine somebody who on Shabbat opens a newspaper. It's not really prohibited, really, from the Torah. The rabbis, the prophets, discourage us from doing things that we do during the week on Shabbat, even though they're not prohibited. Reading a newspaper. What are you going to do? What are you going to see? Only bad news. Oh no, my stock just lost some value. That's going to destroy your Shabbat. You're going to be depressed. The whole idea of Shabbat is that you should be happy, that you should focus on the reality, that you should not be sad and depressed. If you're going to be doing things that are incompatible with that, that's what's going to happen. You see what I mean? So isn't this beautiful? Shabbat is great. For people who don't understand that it's a burden. So if we understood that there's no just plain logic to the Torah, there's a lot of depth that we in our own mind cannot fathom, cannot fully understand the ways of Hashem, then we would be a little bit more humble. And we will say, probably this makes sense forever. Probably this should never change. Probably this is good forever. For some reason that we don't know. My favorite example is what the Minister of Defense, I'm not going to say his name, from Israel once said. They asked him, sir, how come when you catch a terrorist, you don't put him to death? Death to the terrorists, death to those people who try to kill you. Why do you lock him up in jail, let him out free after a while? What's the purpose of that? So he gave 3 logical explanations as to why the Israeli government's policy is not to kill, unless of course it's in the middle of war. Number 1, if the terrorist knew that he's going to be put to death, he will fight to the end. Wow. Logical. We don't want him to fight to the end. We want him to give up. Number 2, if we keep him alive, we can get information from him. Well, get the information and then kill him. Number 3, if we keep him alive, if we ever have to do an exchange of prisoners, we have with what to exchange. Wow, 3 great explanations. Logical. But what does the Torah says? I don't want your explanations and your logic. The Torah says somebody that has killed needs to be put to death. That's it. Obviously, there are certain conditions that have to be met to apply the death penalty. But the death penalty is something that Hashem says needs to happen. The world cannot allow murder to get away with it. Somebody shedding other people's blood, his blood will be shed too. If the conditions are right. Certain conditions have to be met for human beings to put other human beings to death as a penalty, as part of a punishment. So where's all the logic? The logic is gone out the door, out the window. Man's mind and logic cannot compete with the Torah. Right? But if we try to use our mind and we go against the Torah, we're going to get into trouble. We cannot. The Torah is very, very clear. It doesn't mean we should not use our mind logic. Use your mind logic for other things, but not when it goes against what the Torah says. And that is why the rabbis tell us, Torah bagoim al tamin. Chokhmah bagoim tamin. Anybody tells you that the goyim can come up with a Torah, don't believe it. They cannot come up with the Torah because they are human beings who change their mind. If the fathers of the constitution of this country would wake up today, they'd get a heart attack. They'd go back to the grave right away. They see what's going on. They did not have in mind these kinds of things, this kind of behavior, this kind of conduct and laws that today. But people today, the senators of today, are basically growing up in a different kind of generation, different time, exposed to all kinds of things. And their mind is contaminated by views that were totally not compatible with the past views. And therefore they're enacting laws or allowing certain things to happen because they're okay with it. They tolerate it. People change, as we said in the very beginning. People adapt to all kinds of circumstances. The Torah cannot do that. Otherwise, the Torah will be changing every month or 2. Human beings, therefore, cannot have a Torah because their Torah changes. There's amendments to the Constitution. There's changes of laws all the time. Legalize this, abolish this. Therefore, we see that the Torah has to be kept intact, and there was always a hikped. We were always very strict that the Torah cannot be missing any letter even. No letters. The Sofrim, a Sofer, a scribe was called a Sofer. Why? Why a Sofer? Sofer means to count. Yes, because they had to count the letters. Part of the job was to know exactly how many letters there are. We can't have one missing, one too more, one too much more. No letters changed, no letters missing, no additional letters. Everything has to be the exact same way it always was. So Goyim can have Chokhmah, wisdom. They cannot have Torah. Their Torah is dependent on their human mind, and that human mind changes. By us, it therefore always has to be the same because it's given to us by Hashem. The Christians like to point that, wait a minute, it's not their fault. Not their fault that they're changing things. They say Yirmiyahu said so. There's going to be a Brita Chadasha, as I said earlier. They're going to use whatever they can to try to defend their views. anytime you get something like that, just read it a little bit. The first pasuk, the pasuk after that, you will always be able to realize what he's talking about. What's the Brit HaChadashah that Yirmiyahu is speaking about? Brit Chadashah, when Mashiach comes, when Hashem reveals himself, he will reenact the covenant with us. He will renew the kesher that unfortunately has been severed, or not completely severed, but has been weakened. He will give us a new heart to understand, to worship. He will reenact and redo the whole thing. Not that he will change his Torah. The Brit means the connection, the friendship, right? Between us and him will be strengthened and will be reenacted. That's all it means. How do I know that that's all it means? Because in case you have any doubts about that, about the Torah, if there will be a new one or not, the last prophet is who? Malachi. What does he say? To finish up all the prophecies at which after there's no more. There's more. There's no more. Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah of Moshe. David HaMelech tells his son Shlomo, remember, just do this and you will be successful. Follow the Torah mitzvot. Don't move away from it. Now, one iota. We have so many pesukim, so many reminders. Remember it. Don't move away from it. Don't you dare go against it. What for? There's going to be a change. Not going to be a change. Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi. These last words are very, very important because he's telling us to remember the Torah of Moshe. No Chadashah, no anybody else that will come in the future. Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi. And he connects that to the end of days of Inei Anochi Sholach Lachem et Eliyahu Hanavi. What's this? It will always be the same Torah Moshe. Look at the Kohelet. How does Kohelet finish up his sefer? Tells us all kinds of ideas, shares with us a lot of his wisdom. Sof davar hakol nishma, the end of all things, what matters the most, et Elokim yirah, v'et mitzvotav shemo ki zeh kol ha'adam. Fear God. Observe his mitzvot, ki zeh kol ha'adam. That's what man is all about. If man achieves or accomplishes anything in his life will depend on if he was a God-fearing man, if he observed mitzvot or not. That's what matters. Wealth depends on your mazal. Well, if you're fat, maybe depends on you too. Don't overeat. That's also up to you a little bit, yeah. But there's certain things that are not up to you. If your genes are that you're going to be bald, you're going to be bald. There's certain things that you have no control. What do you have full control over? How good of a man are you going to be? How good of a husband are you going to be? How good of a wife are you going to be? How good of a son? How good of a friend? Relationships with human beings. That's up to you. You choose what you want to make of yourself, how you want to be. How's your relationship with Hashem going to be? You're going to do it right. You can do it only when you feel like it. That is up to you. Another idea to keep in mind is that our forefathers, when they received the Torah, did they just receive it for themselves? No, they committed themselves ledore dorot, for all the generations, for the kids and for the grandchildren, for all the descendants. For all the descendants. Everybody is committed. So nobody should come and say, this does no longer apply to me. They were crazy enough to believe it, that's fine, but not with me. No. When they said it, they committed, they obligated themselves to all the generations. That's a very important idea because nobody can just leave. Nobody can just say, I don't want to be a part of it anymore. You have no choice. When the Torah was given, it was accepted, it was a commitment made forever. Anybody who learns the Gemara, Midrashim, will also not see any place where any rabbi tries to make changes of the Torah. I mean, it's never heard of. There's no such thing. The only ones who began to attempt to make changes, who had the chutzpah, the gall, are the Reform, conservative. They call themselves rabbis. They're not. A rabbi is a teacher of the Torah as we have it, But that movement, of course, tried to adapt to the secular way of life, whether it was in Germany or in America, to make it easier for themselves. They felt that it was a need to make a change. Otherwise, how could they defend what they're doing? They're Jewish, after all. Their mother is Jewish. I don't know about their father, but their mother, right? So how are they going to live with it? They don't want to live with the contradictions. Their conscience is going to bother them. No. The Torah can be changed. It can be modified. Mapito, who told you that? Where does it say it can? Because it was a committee. It was not divine. So the Reform immediately removes the biggest stumbling block and says, you know what? It was a committee anyway. Torah is not divine. There was no God gave it to Moshe. No. What does it say that? It says so. Or he wrote that so. So with them, there's no use talking to. They've removed the foundation that the Torah is divine. But with conservatives, they say, oh, I can drive to shul. I'm going to shul. I can drive. I'm just pressing the pedal. It's okay. It's, Whoa, what does it say that? There's fire, ignition. Their own interpretation. And obviously, they're going against everything that is written, all the halacha. And with them, at least, you could have a discussion. You can have one, because maybe they will be convinced, if they're open-minded, that is, that they're wrong. If their foundation is that the Torah is divine, it's a matter of interpretation. If you have an open mind, then you may be able to, you may succeed in convincing them. But up until then, you really don't have great leaders, at least, who dared make any changes, because they understood what use is it. The Torah says, you can't. So am I going to make a change? Where do we have some changes? We do have some small, minor changes in certain areas of the Torah. For example, the Aleph Bet. We had a Ktav Ashuri and a Ktav Ivri, different scripts. For whatever reason, I'm not going to get into that discussion. It's a whole big topic in itself, how it happened. What was our original script? The original script, according to the consensus, I say consensus, was Ktav Ashuri in the Luchot HaBrit, in the tablets, the Ktav that we have today, the square. It was not the Phoenician type that looks more like Greek. That Ktav was used for a long time during the desert, during the First Temple era. That was a Ktav that was in use for a while, for reasons that I don't want to get into right now. But that's not our beautiful Ktav, the Ktav that we have today, that was implemented after we came back to it and started to rebuild the Second Temple. So there are little differences, but there is a reason for them. And one has to learn the sources to see why there was a change and what those changes represent. So long as we had Nevuah, there was no really machlokot in Am Yisrael. There was not too many arguments. We had prophecy. We can hear the word of Hashem. What does Hashem have to say? The machlokot that we spoke about before, that was partially intentional and partially was not intentional. The part that was not intentional that came about, unfortunately, because of Galut. The Torah in certain places was forgotten, or part of it was forgotten. There were not enough teachers to teach it properly. The transmission was not completely broken, but was weakened. Either way, regardless, the big rabbis who were in charge of transmission and teaching the Torah still, in making major decisions, had to apply, had to use the 13 midot shatorah nidreshet b'hem. They had to use klalim, rules that were handed over to them in order to figure out how do you make a decision. Today too, you make a psak halacha, you want to resolve something, the situation that came about that did not exist in the past. Right? In vitro fertilization. Just a quick example. They didn't really have it in the past. Maybe they did. We don't know. What do you say? What's your opinion? Well, you have to know Torah. You have to know halakha. You have to know everything else to be able to see how this fits in with that. Now that we're going to modify the halakha, we're going to use the klalim, the rules that we have that have already been established, to apply it to new circumstances. So new circumstances will arise. They always have. But we can't go against the basics. We can't contradict what has been established. We have to use the rules. And rules do exist that can be applied to this situation. You may have different opinions because of how the rules are used. In the end, we're nevertheless going to only adapt the majority's opinion. And which majority? The majority of those who are observant and respect the Torah mitzvot. Not the majority of the world, not the majority of Jewry, because unfortunately they're not all religious. We're talking about those who respect and follow and are familiar with the main body of language of the Torah. So even though there were certain machlokot and differing opinions, part of it was okay and acceptable, lagdil Torah ladira, to enhance the Torah, to show how broad it is and how deep it is. And part of it had to do because of the weakening of the system due to galut, or due to the fact that there was not enough shimush talmidei chachamim, which means that they did not have a very strong connection with their rabbis and teachers. And then you have something else called minhagim. Minhagim, customs, that's not really halacha, not midoraita and not midrabanan. Minhagim are customs that evolved in the diaspora. Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. That's okay. These are just customs. Custom is customs. It has nothing really to do with the Torah having changed. Customs is acceptable because of a variety of reasons that the rabbis of the community felt that this is what should be implemented. And that is why another idea called the Gzerot by the Chachamim is also not a problem. Because Gzerot, decrees that the Chachamim made, was, as the Torah says itself, the rabbis were given permission to safeguard the Torah. So the Gzerot are a mishmeret, to guard the Torah, to defend the Torah. They're not additions, they're not changes, but they're giving me a new halacha, a new mitzvah. It's not exactly a mitzvah. It's to safeguard and to defend and protect the original mitzvah. So we have to have in place the rabbis who had the permission. Remember, they had the permission and the jurisdiction. The Torah actually gave it to them. Al pi asher yorucha, Chachamim. Whatever they tell you, whatever it is, you have to follow it. Whether it's right, left, right, makes no difference. As long as it does not contradict, as we said before, the basics. When can it contradict temporarily? If a Navi would come and tell you, just for today, or At Sha'ah, for now, you can do this or do that, as long, even then, it cannot be something against Anochi Hashem Elokecha, or Avodah Zarah, against what Hashem himself said. If a Navi that is accepted a prophet were to say something that you can do now that ordinarily we never did, if it's Hora'at Sha'ah, he says, I only tell you to do it now. It's not a permanent change. That's fine. That may be possible. Permanent changes do not exist. Cannot happen. Anybody were to say it's a permanent change, we know he's lying. But a Navi does have a permission for Hora'at Sha'ah. He's a Navi. Remember, he's accepted. He has proven himself. So we know he's for real. If it's something that does not go against the first two commandments, which is the essence of our faith, then it may be possible to do. We see all along the Hishtalshelut, we see how the Torah evolved, not evolved in the sense of change, but how it was given, how it was taught, how it moved or went from one generation to another generation, how it was transmitted. It was always done b'hakpadah, it was always done strictly, with a seder. It was not written, all of it was not written in the beginning, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, until there was a need to write it, because people were forgetting. How it was organized, how they were very strict about it, right? All of this shows how important it was for the rabbis, for those who understood the Torah, to preserve it and not to allow for anything to infiltrate it or any changes. Because they were aware of human nature. They were aware of the many forces out there that are trying to subterfuge, to act as, it was to make Chas v'Shalom changes and to abuse it, for their needs and for their to push their agendas. They were aware of all this. So therefore, they were extra careful. Also very important that I recommend that people learn the Torah in Lashon HaKodesh. Learn the Tanakh in Lashon HaKodesh, even though you're allowed to say Tehillim in Farsi. For those who don't know English, you can pray in any language. Hashem understands Chinese, believe it or not. Yeah. Any language. You can speak to him. But to learn, it's important that we learn it from the original language. Otherwise, you may, if you ever have an argument with a Christian, he may point to you, hey, I just read in your Torah, in your Tanakh, that there was a virgin birth. I said, really? Yeah, it says virgin there. I said, first of all, where does it say? Where does it say virgin? So he points to you, to the English. In the King James or whichever Bible, it says virgin. If you go to the original text, you will see it says alma, not betula. In Hebrew, virgin is betula. It says there alma. Alma is a young maiden, a young girl. Nothing to do with virgin. And first of all, what does it talk about a birth there? What does it have to do with the price of cheese in China? What you're saying? It's nothing. What the Navi over there is talking about has nothing to do with what you're saying. That's besides the point. And then your translation is completely wrong. But a guy who never went to Hebrew day school, didn't have a Jewish upbringing, a Jewish education, doesn't know Hebrew, he might be taken by it, especially if he has doubts about Judaism, especially if he's upset. Yeah, that's all he needs is somebody to brainwash him. It's important that we be proud of what we have and that we treasure what we have and that we understand it and learn from it. Otherwise, it becomes a problem. Rabbis tell us, Dama shetishriv la'apikuros, you have to always know what to answer at Apikuros. We learn it. And if you don't, then don't argue with him, because he might convince you. If you don't know what to answer, don't argue. And then comes my favorite idea. If Hashem really, really, really wanted to change the Torah, remember this. If anybody ever tells you he changed this, that, all kinds of, says, I can make the entire discussion, last 30 seconds. If Hashem really wanted to change his Torah, don't you think that he would come down again the same way he came down the first time? And says, you know what, Hashem, I'm, from now on, for whatever reason, I am changing. I'm giving you a new Torah, and it has this amount of commandments, and forget that. Chas v'shalom. He said he won't do that. He said he won't do that. But if he wants to, he would have to at least, the very least, do it the same way he did it the first time. Otherwise, you expect us, you Christians, to believe that this one man came to the world, a man, a human being, no matter what they call him, and expect me to believe him? There's no revelation. There's no Har Sinai. There's no Ma'amad. There's no hearing the voice of Hashem. You expect me to undo that for the testimony of a human being that I did not see, experience firsthand? I experienced firsthand. I was there. I heard my forefathers. We were all there. And we gave it over to our kids and our grandchildren. This is what we experienced and heard. Why should this testimony undo that? What right does it have? It's not fair. It's not right. It's silly. But some people buy into it. It can't. He said himself, I'm not changing. Don't add. Anybody who comes who tells you that I sent him and changes the Torah, you should know he's a false prophet and he's going to die. There's so many warnings about the potential for false witnesses to come. Be careful with that. And last but not least, let us not forget what we've learned. Let us not forget what we've seen. It is incumbent upon every Jewish father to give this over to his kids, to impress upon them that they should be as excited as they were, as his forefathers were. Kihem hayenu ve'orech yaminu. This is, our life depends on this. This is not something so simple. This is not a Torah that we have to hang up on the wall or put in the museum. Torah tzivanu Moshe Murasha Kilat Yaakov. This is our heritage. So kihem hayenu, this is our life. Our life depends on this. We have to be careful with it. If we protect it, it will protect us. However, the only way we will have an interest in protecting is as the end of the pasuk says, "Uvahem nehge yomam v'layla." If we learn the Torah day and night, it's not once in a week, once a month, once in a while when I feel like it. This is our heritage. This is our life. This is our roadmap. Can you travel now somewhere where you've never been without reading signs? Well, yeah. People tell me, yeah, I have a GPS. Well, at least you have to listen to the voice, turn right and turn left. Right? You can't. How many of you have gone somewhere that you've never been before and passed the off-ramp, the exit, by mistake? Has it ever happened to you? Oh, I should have gotten out over there. You passed it. But Baruch Hashem, you went off the next one and you got back. It happens because we're not paying attention, we're not reading the signs. If a Jew does not read the Torah, does not learn from it, he's going to make mistakes. As one rabbi said, if you don't review Hilchot Shabbat, you're for sure going to be making transgressions, mistakes on Shabbat. Shabbat, there's so many details. How could you not review it? You have to continue to review if we forget. So if we want to have clarity, we want to be strong, we want to be sure of our way, we want to be confident, we want to be excited about the mitzvot, we have to continuously learn from it. We need to continuously be connected to it. We're not allowed to have any doubts about it. And if we remind ourselves that this is Torah min hashamayim, this is not made up, this is divine. This will always be, it's for eternity. This is our roadmap. This is our life, depends on it. Then Bezat Hashem, it will be easier for us and for our children to follow it.